Russia fired more than 600 drones and missiles at targets across Ukraine earlier this morning in one of the largest aerial barrages since the start of the war. The attacks reportedly killed at least 4 people in Kyiv and wounded dozens more. Ukraine's Air Force said its air defense shot down or deflected dozens of missiles and most of the drones. We're joined now by Jill Doherty, CNN contributor and former CNN Moscow bureau chief and adjunct professor at Georgetown University. Jill, thank you so much for being here with us. We appreciate it. It's yet another Sunday where we say Russia has done X thing that is the worst or the first that they have done after over 3 years of war. Where is Russia right now, and what are they hoping to accomplish here?
Yeah, I mean, that really is a question, because you're right. I was thinking the very same thing. You know, every day we're saying it's the worst since the beginning. I think on the one hand, you know, their strategy has a lot of parts to it. So dealing directly with the war, the kinetic part of the war against Ukraine, they're trying to exhaust, they're trying to terrorize, they're trying to make Ukrainians simply give up and think that it's too much. So this constant bombardment, they would deny, of course, as usual, that they are bombing civilian targets, but obviously civilians are dying and they are being bombed. You know, then I think there's another part to this, which is you have, and I know we'll probably talk about it, but you have the drones and the MiG fighters that have gone into the West. That's another way of kind of, you know, fighting the war with lack of clarity. You know, is it an attack? Is it not? And then you have the role of China, and then you have the role of the United States and Russia. So they're pressing on all of those different parts in different ways.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so let's and in the midst of all of that, because I do want to touch on those other issues you said, but for the first time we heard President Trump say this week he thinks Ukraine can win this war. How do you think that landed with President Putin?
Well, I think maybe the Russians are as confused as everyone else. I mean, that was a 180. There was a lot of confusion here in the United States and among our allies. And it could be that the Russians are confused by it too. So they're continuing with, you know, again, attacking Ukraine, but they're doing other things to try to figure out exactly what Trump means. And to me, that kind of boils down to they're testing the West, and then they're also testing how the United States is working or not working with its allies.
And to that end, this testing of NATO, these NATO countries that you mentioned, that have reported some drones flying into their airspace, they're blaming Russia. And I know you and I talked before, and you said this is like they like to leave things kind of nebulous. Where did they really do it on purpose? What is their true intention? The fact is these things continue to happen. Do you think at this point it's looking more like a test for the West and testing NATO, or is it something else?
Well, I think it's a number of different things. It is a test. I mean, when they come close, like, let's say there were 2 different types of things. There were the drones that came into Poland. They also were close to Romania. They have the MiGs, you know, the fighter jets up in Estonia. So they're coming in different ways. And, you know, in an immediate fashion, let's see how the West reacts. How does NATO react? How many minutes does it take? What do they do? And then we have this big debate about should they be shot down? Should they not? And here's where you had those surprising comments by President Trump. Yes, he said, the allies should shoot them down. And then he also said Ukraine can win back the territory that it's lost and maybe even more. So, you know, the Russians look at that. I don't think they quite believe or they're on board with everything that he's saying. And if you look at very carefully at what President Trump said, at the end of all of that last week, he said, good luck to both sides. So, you know, what are we to understand by that? So I would say Russians, you know, will exploit what they can, test where they can, and really importantly, it's testing what does the United States do when the allies, when NATO allies are tested. And that, to me, is the question. The Russians are saying, will the U.S. come to the aid of its NATO allies?
Right. That is the big question here. All right, Jill Doherty, good to see you. Thank you so much.